Hello everyone. We tried to put this on as live and unfortunately it didn't work because of the Wi-Fi connection, so we are going to be pre-recording this and you'll be watching this in the future, uploaded to our Instagram account. So it's going to be a brief tour of the Students Foundation degree show. I'm going to talk to some of them about their work and hopefully you'll come away from this feeling like you've had a good idea of what the students have been doing. So let's go in and have a look at what we've got. And it's highly appropriate that the first person we come to is Jenny Thomas, who in many ways sourced this space for us. It's where you live as well, Jenny. So would you like to talk us through your work?
Okay. So earlier in the year I was researching as part of my practice a painter back from the 60s, a guy called Frederick Hammersby, who used to use colour theory a lot in his work, and he made shapes and out using lovely colours next to each other and everything, and he cut them up into squares and then rearranged the squares and just saw how the colours would react off each other, and so that was the sort of springboard of where I was going. And so I've used some of his colours for the background and then done my own collage and masking with masking tape over the top.
That's great, and I believe this work has different sides to its personality, that there's a secret hidden side that we can investigate. So if we bring the camera around, have a look. This is rather unusual for a painting.
Well, it was kind of site specific really. We needed something to break up the room, and so that's why it's double-sided. It kind of fitted quite nicely. We needed a something big to fit in this space, and so I thought I'll give it a go. Not the usual size that I'm used to.
No.
So this side is the same configuration of background shapes, but I've just put the colours in the different places to see how it would change, having the darker colours at the top opposed to the bottom and the white in the middle, how they all react to each other.
And I think something that we can sort of take advantage of with the cameras, if we just zoom in, you can see that this is a collage of what looks like text and photos. Could you explain a little bit about what they are?
So some of this is French newspapers and cartoons and things, but some of it is papers that I've made myself. Those are my glasses, so I've taken photographs of my glasses and then done a repeat pattern on a word processing document and then just printed them out, and they become patterns. And I've done the same with our remote controls, TV remote controls, and there's some of my boots as well, so I've done the same sort of process with my boots.
I think that's great. I think it's your most ambitious work to date.
Absolutely.
I think highly appropriate for this situation, a great one to begin with, and I think it's got that real zap factor as you walk through the door, being hit by that, which is great, and I don't think it's like a divider. I think it's an integral part of the show and the feeling of the space, so it's well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, you can applaud as well. Next we have Helen here. So you muted the sounds of Morton Feldman on your work there, but I mean we can have it back if you want on there. Helen, do you want to introduce this kind of installation video work?
Yeah. Most of this work, well, the idea came from during lockdown when I was limited into the kind of materials that I had available. So I started looking at photography and film, and in particular I was interested in the way that women artists had been represented or not represented actually through the art historical canon. So particularly in relation to Jackson Pollock, was really interested I came across a video that was a film that was made by a German filmmaker called Hans Namuth of Jackson Pollock doing his drip and pouring paintings. And when I was researching the film, something that really struck me was the language and the speech that he used in the film was actually written by his wife, and he was completely incapable of talking about his work without her input, and yet she was a famous artist herself, and so she never got shown or exhibited, and for me that really struck a chord. So I wanted to make a sort of feminist statement, a film about, it's a parody of that film of Jackson Pollock, but with a little feminist twist. And I wanted it to be funny, and I wanted it to be real, and of course it was filmed at home because we were in lockdown. And then when I was thinking about how I wanted to show the film, it felt right to have it in some sort of, rather than just on the wall, a sort of home-based installation piece, which is where this sort of came from.
No, I think it's great. I mean, is it interactable? I mean, can people
Yes,
sit on
yeah,
it?
of course you can.
I mean, or are you going to get sort of
No, you can
a
have a
Jackson
seat.
Pollock
Please
on
have
my
a seat.
jacket? Right? So
No,
it's there. I mean, the thing that really excites me about this work is just the details. I think really what you've got working here with. I mean, if you can zoom in on this colour to the Pollock's boots have become the fluffy slippers, and his bourbon has turned into, actually looks like quite strong coffee that you've got there, so he probably wasn't totally averse to that either. But I mean, is this coming from a position of, do you feel conflicted about that kind of modernist painting? I mean, do you have mixed feelings about it? Does the machismo put you off? You know.
No, I think I like the modernist painting, and it's not a criticism of Pollock or anything like that, but it's more just about highlighting the fact that women also had a place as modernist painters, and I wanted to make that point about the fact that women can paint art in exactly the same way, even when we're stuck at home and we don't have studios and all the rest of it. So we can make pillowcases, and you know, it doesn't have to be a pillowcase, but we can make art at home without.
Well, I feel like we should also say it's quite interesting that you're referring to Jackson Pollock's wife.
Yes.
When actually Lee Krasner which was her name, is a very substantial, very important artist in her own right as an abstract painter, but has forever, or for at least in the 50 years since Pollock died, until she started to assume a better position in the art historical canon, was always Jackson Pollock's wife, wasn't it? So it's good that that's been put back and put right. So. But I think it's a really good piece. It's very well, the detail of it. If anyone knows the famous Hans Nemeth Pollock video, it's extremely good the way that you're working with that language.
I used the actual soundtrack that features in the film in the background when I was making my film. So that's some of the actual music.
That's great. It's nice to hear a bit of Morton Feldman in the afternoon, so that's great. Thank you very much for that, Helen. Well done. So we're going to, I'll just hit the slipper, sorry about that. So I'm going to talk about Neil Eastall's work here. So could you just go, because actually this benefits looking at it's a kinetic sculpture. In some ways, this work, I'm going to sort of extemporise for Neil on this. Let's borrow his phone. That this work, in some ways, it meshes quite nicely with the dialogue that Helen was creating with a certain type of modernist abstract painting. Shall I stand up here? And in some ways, it's a common theme running through this work. I think that although it's titled Field Work, I think that the inheritance of modernism, and particularly that moment in the 50s that's known as high modernism, I think it hangs heavy over these artists. And I think the way everyone is working with it is actually very interesting. And I think what Neil is working with here is looking at a particular way that shapes, form, materials combine to create space. And I think it's really a very sophisticated piece. I think on the first hand, when I saw this, there was a sense of wonder kind of looking, because I wasn't quite sure how it's moving, and it's just moving by its own sense of momentum and weight. And then here, if you can't quite work it out, there's a video next to it that's set within the concrete. So you have the real thing and then a representation of the thing. So in a sense, it's creating a distance to the modernist language that it's referring to, the work of the 1950s. In particular, people like the English constructivist painters would be a point of reference here for Neil. And I find that really exciting, this two screen. One is virtual, one is real. Two types of space and two types of opportunities for us to enter into that space. So I find it it's a very, very interesting piece to look at, and very interesting the way this little corridor, this fire escape corridor, has been repurposed into a showing space. So it seems quite casual seeing it there. You almost are surprised when you come across it. And actually it's useful because it does draw you in, and maybe we look at that in a certainly more intense way than we would have perhaps if it was situated amongst here. So well done, Neil. Congratulations for that. Moving on. So here's one. Now this is work by Louisa. There's Louisa. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about Louisa. The first thing to say is that in the studio, let's just come in and look at how this is made first. It's actually made with, I believe they're IKEA pencils, or I suppose in another life they would have been like bookies pens, wouldn't they? And there has been an element of them being sanded down and configured into this sculptural combination. The thing I would say is that when these were in the studio back at the art school, the points, there was some of these sculptures were points out, and while I was trying to social distance in a tutorial, I backed up too far into one, and I actually know what it's like to be put in an Iron Maiden. It's not pleasant, so I'm rather pleased Louisa has put it this way. I mean, when I look at this work, this angle, if you could take this angle, you know, this angle, it's a fascinating, almost like honeycomb, or again, that language of a certain type of modernist design or structure appears on there. But then, as we turn, as we go nearer, we start to realise that these units, they're not a kind of product of deep artistic thought. They're found objects, that they're quotidian, everyday, quite disposable little wooden pencils. When we turn here and we actually take this angle, and this is where it's very successful in terms of how it's utilising different angles and sculptural formats on this sculpture, is suddenly there's a violence appearing on here. If we come around the other side as well, there's an absurdity to it. It's quite funny, but on the other hand, it's actually quite threatening. I'm quite glad that it's sort of pushing there. It's almost like a hail of arrows firing in. I mean, this work makes me, I think, in the one hand, when I'm on this angle, I kind of find it a very interesting piece of, you know, it's an interesting proposition, the way the shape and the form work on it. I think the way the materials go together, the multiplicity of the same units repeating. And then moving here, you go from that very detached thoughts about it to this, which is actually quite visceral, and it looks quite painful. Well, it is painful. I can attest to that if you got on the wrong side of it. So it's a funny piece, it's a thought-provoking piece, and I think it's visually very powerful as well. So congratulations, Louisa, well done.